Hey everybody, my name is Samira Moyadin and I've got a new podcast. It's called Show and Tell. I'll be speaking with people in diaspora communities who for whatever reason can't go back home, but they carry items with them that most remind them of that place. My first guest is waiting in the studio. His name is Saman Arbabi and he's someone that I've wanted to speak to for a long time. See you soon. Today, we're going to learn all about Saman Arbabi's object. So if you could, please reveal your object to us, Saman.
Thank you for having
Drum
me.
roll.
Shabam. Very exciting.
Okay, so you sent me a photo of this also, and I was trying to figure out, the thing that I came up with is that it is a black rock of some kind, maybe a pebble.
Yep.
Is that right?
It's exactly what it is. Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so give me the backstory of this. Where is it from?
So this is actually from Shomal, northern Iran, by the Caspian Sea. And I think it may be from 1983 or 84. During the time, like the bombing of the two cities during the Iran-Iraq war, when they escalated the bombing of Tehran quite a bit. I remember those who were lucky enough would leave the city and move up to the north to kind of like get away from the night bombings. And I remember things got really intense. So my mom decided to put us in a car with my grandmother and my grandfather and my dad and my sister. And we all went to Shomal, northern Iran, for a few days. And then in the middle of it, my dad had to return, leaving us all up in there. Because we had a dog at home. He had to take care of the dog, and he obviously had to go back to work. So that was like one of the few times I was actually very afraid of my dad's life. And like, I'm not like when people say goodbye, I don't cry, that type of thing. But for some reason, that day was very harsh because I was like, this could be the last time I see my dad. I was like maybe 10. And so anyway, he knew I was feeling like kind of like, sad. And then he was just trying to make me feel good. So we were walking around like on the beach. He was going to leave in like an hour or two. And he was trying to get my mind off of things. And he just like, he picked up a rock. He's like, oh, look, it looks very circular or very round. He was just trying to like, just take my mind somewhere else.
Take your mind off it. Yeah.
Yeah. So he picked it up and he looked at it. He's like, it's not as round as I thought it was. And then he just tossed it away. And then he turned around. He was going to go say goodbye to my mom and everybody. And I was like, I need that rock. So I ran and I found it in the middle of this, all the sand and stuff. And I picked it up and I was like, I'm going to hold on to this till I see my dad again. And then he drove back to Tehran that night. And everything after that, everything was fine. Nothing happened to him. So, but I didn't see him for a bunch of days and I was very worried. So I kept it. And then when I left Iran in 1985, for some reason, again, my dad stayed behind. And out of all the things I brought with me, I brought this. So I was like, okay, I'll take this with me again. I had good luck the first time. I'm going to see him again. So when we moved to France, I took this with me. And then he joined us maybe like a year later. But I've had it since. I've had it
and do you keep it in a special place?
I do, actually. I have it like a jewelry box, but it's all like fake stuff. And this is amongst the chains and the fake items that I have. So yeah, it's there. And next to it is also a watch my mom gave me when I was a kid. So yeah, these are together.
Really? So for those who don't know, I should probably give a bit of a background to you. For those who don't know, or those who've been living in a cave for the past 20 years, I first got to know you through the show Parazit. Rest in peace, Parazit, which was a political satire show, really sort of funny, but at the same time hard-hitting and political. And someone referred to you as a civic satirist.
John Stewart did.
That's right, yeah, which I found really, really cool and interesting way of sort of looking at the show. And when I was thinking about sort of putting this show together, like show and tell, it was really to sort of get back to the basics of storytelling, right?
Sure.
I'm not sure. Did you have show and tell in Iran in class?
I don't remember. I was in Iran till like sixth grade, but
Yeah.
I all I remember is like studying Arabic and the Quran and getting beaten by the school principal. So I don't have any show and tell good memories. If it was show and tell, it was probably bad. No,
Yeah.
I don't remember. I don't
Yeah,
think
here,
so.
so in the West, in school, that you always have something called show and tell. You would bring in something from home and tell a story about it or whatever. But when I was thinking about show and tell for kids who grew up in Iran, because there was this sort of thing where I've heard a lot of
Hmm.
kids who grew up there would tell me how the teacher would ask you to snitch on your parents. Like they would ask you,
Yeah,
are
we
your
did have that.
parents. So what was
Yeah.
what was that like? Could you take me through that process of like being a
It,
kid and what that was like?
you like you touched on like the worst year of my life in Iran. We left Iran in '84. We moved to Paris because we were one of those fortunate families. I had family members who lived abroad and citizens, U.S. citizens. So we were trying to get our green card in 1984. So we moved to France, and that's where the process was happening. And for some reason, there was a mistake in the paperwork or whatever. My mom's like, in the middle of the school year, she's like, we have the whole thing's delayed by like another year, so we have to go back to Tehran and then come back in a year. And to me, that was like a death sentence because I was like, I hated like the school system in Iran so much, and I had such bad memories that when she told me this, I was like, I was begging her to put me like send me to pension, like boarding
Oh my
school.
God, yeah.
And like, what kid does that? Like, begs their parents to please don't. I don't want to be with you. Just send me to like a boarding school. So anyway, she like in middle of the school year, we went back, and I had like long hair. I was like 11 or 12. Like tight jeans back in the day. Remember the
Oh
tight
yeah.
jeans were like,
Yeah.
that was it. And big puffy ski jacket, and like literally like 3 days after I arrived, my dad was like, "You got to start school. You've already fallen behind. So I'm going to take you to the school." It was called Shahid Saidi, Martyr
Wow.
Saidi. And
Yeah.
back then, they used to pretty much name everything after the martyrs or whatever they wanted to do. So the car arrives in front of this really, like, it looked like a beautiful home that just went through hell. It was I think one of those old houses that was confiscated from like
A family
Pahlavi,
that had left. Yeah.
right? And that turned it into some school that like wasn't really. And then I could hear the kids on the other side, and the little big metal door open, and I walked in, and it looked like one of those scenes from those, Western spaghetti films. Like the guy walks into a bar, and
Yeah.
everyone just quiet. Like the whole school, like all these kids with shaved heads, and like they're
And here you
wearing
are. Yeah, with your long hair and your puffed
gray
out coat.
uniforms. And then I walked in, and like all the eyes just went like this, and I'm like, oh my god, this is so bad. I got set up. So anyway, that year, we had like, it was grade sixth, seventh, or eighth. Anyway, there was this kid who was the school bully and very close to like the principals and all that. Like
The
he
little
was the
snitch.
he was the snitch and kind of like, yeah, the hitman. He would always come around and pretend like he's nice and be friendly to me, whatever, but like as if I'm stupid. And he would constantly ask me, he's like, "So yeah, I watched this movie the other day. You guys have a VHS at home?
Wow.
Yeah, I like playing games. Your parents play chess. All this stuff was illegal back then.
Yeah, he's setting
Did,
you up.
Right. Do they have cards and all these things? Do people drink?" And I would always be like, "No, that's illegal. No, da da da." So yeah, he was trying to set me up. And then one time I remember they used to force us to pray. And I didn't know how to pray. I couldn't care less. I was raised in a family. We were all like no one had religion, or no one even believed in God. So like they came one day, and right before praying, the guy's like, "I noticed you didn't go do the wuzu thing, that
You
where
didn't
you got
wash
it."
up. Yeah.
cleanse and all that stuff. And I was like, I had to think really quick because I was like, oh man, I'm going to get a beat down for this one. I was like, I did it at home. That's why, if you notice, when I went to the bathroom, I didn't touch the door. I kicked it open with my foot because I used to do that all the time. The thing was so nasty. So yeah, I got away with it. But yeah, we had snitches all the time that would try to drag you into some trouble. Yeah, it was a terrible year. Aurea Nami, Mr. Nami was.
Wow, you remember the name. Good for you.
I would love to see this guy one day somewhere in the street. He was like straight up like one of Saddam's like torture guys. He would walk around with a stick and just beat the crap out of us. Yeah, Aurea Nami was definitely the guy in charge that year. And anyway, that was the toughest year. And then the following year, I left.
Yeah.
So I barely finished 6th grade, and that was it.
So you were in France for a year for that
Yeah.
process. And then where did you come to in the States?
Rockville, Maryland.
Woohoo!
Yeah, Rockville, Maryland. So it's in the suburbs of DC. My aunt, all of my relatives actually lived in the Bay Area, except for one. And my mom decided to go to the East Coast and be with her because she was the closest to this one. She was a French teacher teaching in Montgomery County, and we moved there. It was a snowy, actually Valentine's Day, April 14th, 1986. We landed there, and it was like in the middle of nowhere. There were like cow farms and milk factories.
Yeah,
and like,
I'm sure a lot back then too. It was much more isolated.
Much, yeah. But it was a great place. I was happy. We had locker rooms, Coke machines, Pepsi machines. I was like, yeah, I'm in heaven. So yeah, good school.
And what do you remember most about the last time you were in Iran? Like, what has stayed with you the most?
This is a good story. So, again, when I moved back, I gave up hope. I was like, this is just, my mom's just trying to make me feel good. We're never going to leave the country again. Because, it was such a defeat. I felt like, she's just saying it because, like, she knows how devastating this is to me. And then 7th grade started, and school started, and it was a Thursday. So we started on like a Saturday. What days were off? Yeah, Saturday,
yeah,
Sunday,
that's right. Yeah,
Monday,
Shanbe, Yekshanbe,
exactly.
Doshanbe, Seshanbe. Yeah,
just Fridays off.
Just one day off.
Just one day off. So on a Thursday, which was the last period of class, we had Quran studies, and we had this psychotic teacher that just loved to beat you up, and he had previously given us an assignment to like memorize a verse of the Quran. It was like 2 pages of just like Arabic stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember I hadn't. I didn't want to. I hadn't. And I remember like he started asking the kids, so who wants to go first? And all these, brown nosers obviously raised their hand. They went first. And then the lazy ones, he started picking on them, those who didn't raise their hands. And I was the last kid. And then he's like, Salman. And I just looked at him, and you had to stand up back then out of respect. Yeah. I just stood up and just started staring at him, and he was looking at me. He knew immediately, like, I don't know, Jack. So then he took like 3 steps just to come towards me to like just beat my ass. And as soon as he got like, I don't know, like 5 feet away from me, the bell went off. Like it was the last bit. So it was like a little
smack you.
It was a little standoff. He looked at me. I looked at him. I was like, so are you going to beat me? He's like, am I going to beat you? Should I go home? It was like a really tense moment. And then he's like, today's your lucky day. First day on Saturday, first class, I'm going to pick on you. You better know the whole thing. So I basically ruined my whole my only day off. I was like, shit, now I got to go home and learn this thing. But he didn't beat me up. So I went home that night, that afternoon. And that night, my mom's like, I got to tell you something. I'm like, what's up? She's like, don't say anything. Don't tell anyone anything. You don't have to go to school next week. I was like, what? She's like, we're going back to France on Wednesday. So I had Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday to stay home, not see the guy, not get beat up, not to memorize the thing, and then fly back to France. I was like, are you really serious? She's like, yeah. So things came, paperwork is in the process now. You're good. We're good to go. We just have to go back, but you don't have to go to school, and don't say anything to anyone that we're leaving the country. So I trusted only one friend of mine, and I told him, I'm like, dude, don't say anything, but wait till Wednesday. And that asshole, when he asks for me again, tell him he went to US. He's like,
And
okay,
this isn't Nami. Is this Nami?
This was seventh grade, so I had
Okay.
moved out of that school. I had gone to a different school, but it was an extension of the Nami kind of psychotic people. But it was a different school. It was Shahid Alipur.
Oh,
So
another Shahid.
I moved on from Saidi to Alipur. Yeah,
There's so many Shahids to choose from.
many.
I want to talk a little bit about Zaza, or Zan Zendagi Azadi.
Sure.
I call it that for short. You were producing Tablet. Yeah, so you were at that time producing the show. Okay. And did you have to, like, when what happened to Masa Amini, did you have to, like, how did you pivot the show to sort of focus on that? What was going through your mind when that happened?
Well, for us was like just it was a normal day, as far as like we didn't have to adjust to anything. We didn't have to do anything much different, because luckily we were doing, the women's right thing for a long time. That was our thing. The hijab, compulsory hijab, was something we started doing when it wasn't even popular. I remember, like, the reformists used to attack us all the time, saying, is this a thing? Is this a big deal you're covering? And there's so many other issues. You guys are ridiculous. So we continued doing it. And by the time this happened, we were kind of ahead of the game already, because we had the pulse of what's going on in Iran. And when that happened, I remember, like, immediately, I think the first place that just, started the beginning of the uprising was in Kurdistan, with the women taking off their scarves and swinging around. So we were already kind of ahead of the game when that happened. We just went to autopilot mode and just started doing what we do, except on steroids, because the amount of videos that just started coming in was something we were already very familiar with, and we knew what to do with them. So we just
I remember all of those attacks. About, like, focusing on the hijab, and I always likened it to, like, someone saying to Rosa Parks, what's your problem? Why do you have to? What do you care where you sit on the bus? We have bigger fish to fry.
What a good example! Yeah, sitting on a bus is that your priority right now? Well, maybe it is mine. What is But it wasn't even about that. It was about the bigger picture. So yeah, I think, and then those same people switched sides, which I'm happy. I'm not going to criticize them.
It's always nice. I'm like, welcome aboard,
Sure. The more of us, the better.
And then the other thing that really, I think, stands out for me from that time was how we became really familiar with all of these youth because of the digital markers they left, like Nika, Sarina, all of these kids. And then the moms, right? Like Minu Majidi and these people that went out into the streets. What are your thoughts about sort of getting to know these people through their digital markers? Are there specific people who passed away or gave their lives that stay with you more than others?
Yeah, it was actually very painful, because when the names started popping up, you would automatically want to go and look up their names and just learn about them. And a whole bunch of times I would, or my wife would, look up and then realize that the person was following me. So you feel like you had some sort of a connection already with these people, and they were on your team. And then that would really hurt. That was like, it had an extra kind of zing to it, because you felt like, this person, like, saw my last post or liked it, or had mentioned something like it, and then 3 days later that person's not there anymore. So yeah, that was kind of like, that was the painful part, to feel like.
Do you even have a sense of the impact that you have on people's lives?
Not really. No, no. I never did. I don't usually think that way.
I
No.
know you're a very humble guy. And I'm not
Yeah.
trying to put watermelons under your armpit. I'm just
Don't
like,
want.
I'm just trying to say that I do think that you do have an impact, particularly among young people. And I this is, I think, a good spot to sort of pivot to the show that I think you're in your second season now of, is it a Sponge?
Yes. Yeah. So third season starts
Third season. Okay.
in a couple of days on April
Uh, for
2nd.
for those who don't know, can you tell us a little bit about the premise of the show?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Yeah, so after everything that happened, I just felt like we need a restart. We need something fresh because I felt like especially Iranian media had just been stuck in this rabbit hole of continuation of like how things went wrong and how horrible things are now. It was just a recycle of just bad news and negativity. So I felt like, okay, this is the best time to sort of just like move on and start something fresh by providing people an outlet to talk about their pain and look forward in what they could do in the future. And especially all these, you heard about suicides and depressions from people who survived this madness and came out of the prison, and they were just different people. I felt like we need to give people a channel where they can discuss these things with a therapist, and hopefully we can start a foot forward for getting better and improving. So, and about anything, because I feel like if you talk about anything with, if you talk about relationship, if you talk about the LGBTQ plus, you talk about, anything in Iran, it ends up being against the government because they try to hide all these things. And now, to my own surprise, the majority of the calls that we get, I should mention, the calls sort of like the shows like the 1990s Loveline show with Dr. Drew and Adam Carolla when they were doing
Yeah.
that. But this is a TV thing, and obviously they used to joke and say a lot of inappropriate things that you can't say these days. But we have a therapist on set, and people call from inside Iran anonymously and talk about anything they have a question about. And we have a therapist that this kind of opens up the issues in a scientific or rational way. So a lot of the calls we get are actually either about forced marriage at a young age. It's either about a lot of rape, men in prison or within family that were abused, family members. You'd be surprised how many of those we get. LGBTQ plus issues.
And like, you're dealing with some heavy shit. Like, I've
Yeah.
listened to some parts of the show, and you're seriously dealing with a lot of stuff. Like, people are bearing their souls. I listened to a lot of the ones that had come out of prison who were arrested. What sort of I mean, sometimes when you guys are listening and I'm watching you and the psychiatrist, how is that impacting you, just yourself, your own psyche?
So when you're on the set, I try not to show so much emotions because I'm trying to treat it like this is like a therapist sort of office. So I don't want to overact, and like even if it bothers me, I don't want to be like so emotional because I don't think it helps the viewers or the listener later. So I try to be neutral as much as I can, but obviously it bothers you. But after the show's over, I mean, we're all just exhausted. I mean, people end up crying, people like start hugging, and like it's heavy, like, especially if you have 60 minutes of just nonstop heavy stuff. It's like a roller coaster of a lot of emotional stuff. So, pretty much like Tuesday afternoons when we're done recording, I'm like done for the whole week because it really drains a lot from you. I'm just beat. When I don't want to go anywhere, I don't want to see anyone. I just come home and crash. That's pretty much it. But on the set, we try to keep it like, professional.
How are you working that out? Like, are you getting on the drums? I know you're loving drums right now. You've got a drum set going. Like, how are you
Yeah,
sort of getting all of that out
that
of your
that
system?
So that during COVID, actually, that's when it started. I felt like this is a good time to pick up on something good in life. It was a sad, depressing, weird time, and also there was a lot of time on your hand to do things that you probably always wanted to do and you couldn't do. So for me, it was drumming. I've always loved music for many years, and then drums were like my passion, like the instrument I always loved. The guy in the back, just sweating his ass
Like
off.
Animal. I think it was
Right.
Animal. Was it Animal from the Muppets? Or
Oh yeah, it was one of them. I can't remember which one it
somebody
was,
played the
but
drums. I think it was Animal.
right. So then my wife encouraged me. She's like, you should. This is a good time to pick up at the instrument, start learning.
Did she know it was going to be drums?
Well, yeah, she did because I had. Yeah, she did actually. So then I found this by pure luck. Found this older gentleman who's now close to his 80s in Brooklyn. He teaches jazz because for drumming, if you want to learn like proper drumming, you have to learn jazz, like
Oh, wow.
how
I
it
didn't
is.
know that.
That's where this stuff is. Like piano, you learn classical music to learn piano. That's where the music theory comes from.
Oh, it comes
Uh,
from jazz. That's so cool. I didn't know
right.
that.
So drumming is jazz, and then I never liked jazz. I never thought I would get into jazz. But he very cleverly like started teaching me the basis of music, which is very complicated stuff. And then he kind of just slowly sucked me into the world of jazz, and I just fell in love with jazz, and I pretty much erased everything I've been listening to till now, and I restarted learning jazz and listening to jazz, and it's been an amazing ride because he was a teenager in Harlem in the 50s and 60s, so the stories he tells you, it's like it's a bridge to those times where like those guys Coltrane and Miles Davis and these guys were playing, and he learned from their drummers. So it's amazing, and basically that's been kind of like my therapy. Like you said, when I come home, that's the mindset.
You seem really at ease at home in New York.
Yeah, this is home. I love we love New York, both of us. My wife lived in Berlin, so they're quite the same almost. And for me, growing up in DC wasn't the place to be. It's very conservative, very dry, very boring. But New York, I find peace in the chaos of it, and I can just really look around and relax and chill. And I love the diversity. The neighborhood we live in is like it's like amazing. Like it's very gender neutral. It's very progressive. Everything's open 24/7. A lot of music and good people. So yeah, I can't see us moving from here anytime soon. This is definitely home.
And is there any sort of desire? I mean, you always talk to Iranians when there's like, Nowruz just passed, and they're like, Solidige Tehran. They're like, next year in Tehran.
uh,
Do you have any of those fantasies?
no, the closest I ever thought about that actually like visualizing that moment was during the Zan Zendegi Azadi movement when it it was spreading like wildfire, and I was like, man, I can see this happening because they were overwhelmed. They didn't know how to deal with it. You would hear the audio communications between the RGC and the Basijis, and they didn't know how to handle it. So for a hot second, I thought if this continues the way it's going, I could see myself there. But now, no, I never. I I I'm sure it's going to happen, but again, like you don't know when. And these dictatorships or these crazy, insane governments, you can't predict when things will fall. I remember when I used to travel in the Middle East, I used to go to Egypt and all these other countries quite a bit. If you had asked me, dude, in 6 months, Mubarak's not going to be ruling this country, I would have been like, you're out of your mind. But then it happened. I came back. 6 months later, the guy was gone. So it could
Yeah,
happen anytime.
A lot of people don't know that about you. That you were a war correspondent. Like you've covered Afghanistan, you were in Egypt, you were in Lebanon. There's this great photo of you in Lebanon. I think you've got a camera in your hand and like the buildings behind you. I mean, it's not a great
Yeah.
photo. It's destructive. And but you were in Iraq. What did I guess what I'm trying to find out is what impact did covering those wars have on your concept or idea of war and what it does in the world, what it does to
Um,
countries.
so you, that's a very good question. The bottom line is like war is just devastating. And a lot of people like talk about like, yeah, we should go bomb this country, bomb that country, but at whose expense? The people who pay for these things are uh, civilians and a lot of kids. I've been to hospitals where I saw burnt children, and it was like, okay, so what is this about? You know what I mean? I learned there's no black and white to these issues, and I understand. Sadly, a lot of people don't talk about the gray either. You have to draw a line. You either have to be on this side or just on that side. And as long as we don't discuss about the gray, um, there will never be a reasonable solution to any of this stuff. There won't be peace.
Um, it's a weird segue, but you also worked at Hooters.
I did. I was.
And I'm wondering, which place was it scarier for you, the Middle East and covering these wars, or Hooters? Like, which gave you more PTSD?
The Middle East gave me more PTSD. Hooters was it was actually the place that I was discovered. Believe it or not,
How
I was a,
so?
I was a cook, and we had this open kitchen, and we had this uh, frequent client that used to come and sit at the bar looking at the kitchen. And most of the customers at Hooters don't really go there to look at the kitchen, you
No,
know, but and he used to just sit there and
they
and,
go for the
and
wings. It's the
they go.
wings.
It's only the wings, right? So I was 19, and then this guy used to come and go all the time, and one day he finally called me, and I was like, this guy's got to be a creep or something, and he's like, my name is Fred, but they call me Spanky. I'm like, okay, what can I do for you, Spanky? He's like, I'm a producer for Diamond in the Morning, ABC radio show. It's Washington
Oh
D.C.'s
wow.
#1 radio. I was like, okay. He's like, I've been looking at you for a couple of months. You're pretty goofy and kind of like crazy. How would you feel about interning for us? I was like, interning for radio. And this was a time in my life where I had dropped out of college. I was a pre-med student and I didn't know
You
what
were
to do.
pre-med?
Yeah, but I'm
That's
glad
wild.
that didn't work out. Uh, I had dropped out for a couple of semesters and I didn't know what's going on. I was trying to figure things out. And what better place than Hooters to go kind of like figure things out about your life? And then this dude's
It's
like,
where I go.
yeah, right. So I accepted. And then once I started working for him, our morning show was actually at 5:30 in the morning. I used to go to
Huh.
bed at 7, get up at 4, and be in the studio. I changed my life. Then I went back to school, studied journalism and communications, and got into the whole broadcasting. So that was the deciding moment for me to grow up and realize, okay, dude, time to do what you really want to do. This is what you want to do, and okay, go get your degree and just keep working hard.
And how did you, because I'm a real lover of satire. What is it about satire? Like, how did you come up with the ideas to sort of put your finger on the absurdities of the Islamic Republic and say, this is what we need to do?
Satire's always been such a huge part of my life. I think it was one of the first things my dad taught me when like yeah, he was obsessed with Charlie Chaplin, and he was a pretty deep guy. You still look at the things he created, you're like, wow, this guy was amazing. And then he loved like political cartoons. I remember like one of his biggest dudes was Ardeshir Mohassis, the
Hmm.
famous Iranian artist, and that you know, even though he wasn't like a funny guy, or no one in my family really, except my step grandfather, who was a joker, it, humor was always in me. Like I would imitate people, and if I had to, and I realized I'm grabbing more attention by poking fun of at things, even if it's um, something not really light. And then just growing up, I loved like Richard Pryor, George Carlin. These are deep stand-up comics, who talked about major social issues, but made you think and laugh at the same time. So I think it was sort of like a natural thing that I gravitated to and loved it forever. And actually, Parazit sort of came out of that whole thing because I used to I used to do real like serious news in when traveling around these countries, but the first one that kind of became the no the mood of Parazit was when I did it behind the scenes, like a journalist report kind of thing, like a diary of myself in Afghanistan and how lame and weak I was as a someone from the West going to Afghanistan for like 2 weeks and not being able to adapt. And it was a humorous thing, but made you think. And that was one of the first parodies that I put out there, and people loved it because I had music, I had some humor, but it was also very dark at the same time because you realized that there's a lot of pain in a lot of different parts of the world.
It
So,
seems like people can deal with stuff more when it's like framed as satirical.
yeah,
Gives you a lot more freedom.
Yeah, because I think you disarm people with that, and they're more receptive to the information you're giving them. Because it's different than you pointing a finger and trying to criticize or yell at somebody, and that's why like people like Jon Stewart were so good at it, because they were self-deprecating to begin with, and then they would talk about these issues not from up here, but from eye to eye, and joke about it. So once you joke, you're sort of disarming the person across, and they're more receptive to the information you're giving. That's why I think humor. Also, those people have I think they have a higher IQ because to to package it like that, it's
Yeah.
amazing the way their process works.
It reminds me of that saying. I don't know if you've heard it. They say, life is a tragedy for those who feel and a comedy for those who think. I want to go back to this idea that you had this sort of fantasy. You said it lasted for a split second, that like you'd go back to Iran. These guys were on their way out and stuff. What differences do you see with sort of your generation compared to sort of Gen Z in Iran right now?
The main difference is back then we had to wait for like a month for a Michael Jackson cassette to like be smuggled, or like a VHS tape of like breakdance and stuff like that. But now people have this. So Gen Z's, like, I was so impressed. I mean, there's no deny of how amazing these kids are. They have, I see these videos from inside Iran that I'm like, is this really like Shiraz or Kerman? Because it looks like Brooklyn. They're so up to date. They listen to good new music. They're very fashionable. They have everything going on that a kid would have in any other part of the Western world or anywhere else. The main difference is they're saying, why can't I have that here in my city when the rest of the world are having it? And that is the breaking point. That's as long as that continues, there's no way this government can stick around for too long. And it's not just like these kids don't just come from like families like yours and mine, or people who were against the regime from the beginning. These are the teenage kids from like some of the Sepahi, the RGC members, the clerics, and side of the government that also are being impacted by this. And that's the point. If that crack begins to really split the whole society away from the government and the ideological insanity that these old mullahs are trying to like force people to follow, that's what we need. Divide and conquer amongst them.
I'm working my way through this for the second time. This book, I don't know if you can see it.
What Iranians want.
What Iranians want, and it does such a great job of like taking you through this generation's wants and needs.
Wow. Who
I would
wrote this?
really recommend Arash Azizi.
Oh, okay, I know Arash. Okay.
Yeah, he wrote the bio of Soleimani too, like a
Yeah.
bio on him. But the last chapter is all about Serena, and it's called Serena's Revolution. It's
Yeah.
so beautifully written. I'm not sure if Arash is going to listen to this, but kudos to him. Like I really am recommending this to anyone that I meet because he really outlines the desires and wants of this generation.
Yeah.
And it's just such a wonderful book.
Yeah, she was a YouTuber, right?
Yeah, she had a vlog and it's just
Vlog, yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
And anyways, I want to sort of get to the really hard-hitting questions now as part of this interview. And Qorma sabzi or qeime?
Qeime.
Haide or mahasti?
Oof. I'm just gonna say Haide because I don't listen to Persian music, but I have heard of Haide more so than Mahasti.
Did you ever watch The Sopranos?
Twice. That was the reason I went back to television again. Changed my life.
So, did you know that Christopher Moltisanti, who's played by Imperioli, his favorite singer is Haide?
You've got to be kidding me.
No, I swear.
I can see that though, because he's Italian. Haide's got that little soprano.
Yeah, I found it on his Instagram. He had put
That's
a post of
insane.
hers, and he had talked about her voice and how
Wow.
amazing it is, and how he like she soothes his soul, and it's
Wow.
like blew my mind.
See, nothing against Mahasti, but if he picked Haide, then I got to go with him too.